Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to Contradictory Advice. This is a series I've been doing where I talk about seemingly contradictory advice that you get in the personal development or business communities, and really discuss them and pick them apart and really figure out if they're truly contradictory and conflicting, or if there's something that's actually at play. My microphone's getting in the way. Okay, there we go. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about the contradictory advice, where some people, they say, oh, you have to have incredibly amazing, huge, big dreams, and that's how you're going to succeed. You have to think unrealistic. And of course, many people point to Henry Ford for inventing the car when everyone was still riding horses, or some people point to Elon Musk for even thinking of these crazy ideas. Hey, let's colonize Mars. Hey, let's build an electric car. Hey, let's start a private rocket ship company, and let's start Solar City so that we can start doing renewable energy. So there's that aspect. And then the other side of the story is, oh, you have to be realistic. You have to be optimistic but realistic, because otherwise you're just a crazy person who doesn't think about the world, and you never get results. And people will point to examples like pretty much American Idol. That's a big one. American Idol was a singing competition, and every season you would see this on TV. People would audition, and they would be so deluded and misguided in their beliefs about their singing ability that they would be so horrendously off tune, and yet everyone could tell, and yet they still believed that they were on tune and great singers, because either no one had told them otherwise, or because they weren't willing to face reality. So there's that aspect too. A lot of physicists and scientists point to this as well. Like you cannot deny gravity, and if you try to, you're going to get punched in the face. You cannot deny something like climate change well, you can until everyone starts, stripping their clothes, because the weather is just horrendously different. So those are some examples, and the biggest is probably the entrepreneur Ramit Sethi, who pretty much he really talks about this, and he calls himself, I am not a person who thinks of what the world would like to be. I'm a person who thinks of the world as it is. And he really emphasizes this point. So now, I'm not claiming to be an expert that has all the answers to this question. However, I really study this area a lot. I mean, I do it more than 99% of people on this earth. So I have a lot of examples, cross-references, and I've done more research on these, so I can have a more detailed perspective that might help you determine what's actually going on here. And so let's just dive right into it. Let's start with Elon Musk, because there's some misconceptions for most people who just kind of skim the surface of understanding what he does, and then those who actually do some research and really figure out like what he is about and how crazy he actually is. And the first thing I want to point to is his commencement speech. So he's done 2 commencement speeches, and they're moderately long. And in one of them, about halfway through, Elon admits that he is not actually as crazy in his ideas as everyone makes him out to be. In fact, when he first got started on his journey after PayPal, he never had this big, bold, crazy idea to really start this whole convoluted, flashy rocket ship company. Instead, his goal was simply, how can I help the most? How can I help move forward the progression of the human race the most? And what little task can I do to do that? So he wasn't thinking big. He was just thinking, what's that little thing I could do? And that little thing was just like something small, like I'm going to help NASA, finalize these blueprints. for this rocket ship, because he saw NASA as really the only player in the space arena at the time, and he thought that helping NASA would be the best thing. And then eventually that evolved into what it is now. But you start realizing that he didn't start with ridiculous beliefs. So after some investigative work, you realize that's not actually the case. Of course, the YouTube videos for the commencement speeches are available for free on YouTube if you want to cross-check the research yourself. Now, again, just to give you my answer rather than like go through all this like discussion before I do. Long story short, my whole idea is that from what I've seen, I think a lot of people get misguided by all these books like The Magic of Thinking Big, which is a very well-known self-development book. But maybe you don't want to be too unrealistic. There's a certain level of realisticness plus crazy, out of your mind ideas. And if you just combine them in the right amounts, it kind of works. If you're too crazy and there's no realism, it's not impossible, but it drastically lowers your chances. You have to be crazy in the right ways while still being realistic in a sense. So it's a really bizarre, difficult balance to deal with. For example, Henry Ford kept telling his engineers that, hey, I want this, very specific type of engine that was impossible at the time, and he wanted it like half the size. He wanted it, twice the efficiency, and all his engineers told him it was impossible. But he just kept saying, "I want it. I want it. It will be done." And he said that for years until the engineers finally cracked the code and solved it. Having said that, he was realistic enough because he actually already was making a decent amount of money creating and manufacturing and distributing actual automobiles at the time. So he was not like that crazy singer who auditions for American Idol who has no basis for his or her success. So he already had something to launch off of. So that's my basic conclusion or theory, subject to change upon further research. But I don't want to overanalyze this. That's really my thing. And again, let's hop back to Ramit Sethi just to support my point. Ramit, he's an entrepreneur who works in the career advancement education industry, which is pretty much a fancy way of saying that he helps people negotiate raises, get jobs, earn money on the side as a freelancer, and he creates courses to do so. And so he's a multi-million-dollar entrepreneur, multi-million-dollar business owner, and he runs a highly trafficked website, iwillteachyoutoberich.com. He's very well known in his space. And the point is, he keeps repeating that phrase, I live in the world of what is, not what is meant to be. And what he means by that is that in his industry, he works with hundreds, if not thousands of people, many of them who are so deluded on what they want that they won't face the facts and really just like buckle down and really see practically what they can do and therefore never move forward. For example, he'll get people who are like, I work at Target, minimum wage, but within a year, I want to be a C-level executive making $500,000 a year, flying private jets. Oh yeah, by the way, I have no high school education, no knowledge of this, nor do I have the work ethic to really work and learn this stuff. And of course, he's going to throw his hands up and say, of course, you're not going to succeed with that. And so, it's a balance of having the right stuff, work ethic, all that other jazz. And then once you have that base, then you can go out and say like, okay, there are some crazy demands that are possible. Again, Steve Jobs has done some crazy stuff that was thought impossible. So has Thomas Edison. He said, I didn't fail 5,000 times at trying to invent the light bulb. I just found 4,999 ways of it not working. And each failure moved me forward to what actually worked. And so that mentality, again, there's some basis to it for the fact that he actually had the work ethic to do this stuff. He actually had a lab. He had, practical, demonstrated physics knowledge. He wasn't just some crazy guy with no basis. And so he was progressing forward. And of course, on top of that, he was a successful businessman, and he had run and invented numerous successful inventions before that. So it was kind of like a mix of everything. But the point is, that's just my theory. I think there is a certain level of basis, and then there's a certain level of craziness. To really change the world in a way, you kind of have to have that. And again, jumping to Napoleon Hill, if you don't know who he is, he's basically this guy who spent his whole life studying 500 of the wealthiest people in person, and then did other studies of tens of thousands of average people. And he was recruited by Andrew Carnegie, the richest guy in the world, and he was able to study in person, thanks to Carnegie, hundreds of the wealthiest people in the world. And one of his favorite sayings after all those decades of studying was that anything the mind can conceive, it can achieve. And for me, I still think that's like kind of ridiculous, because it's too crazy. It's like, oh, okay, so if I can conceive the fact that I'll be able to invent teleportation and be a rock star and an actor and a surgeon and be able to become immortal, then it can actually be created. I don't think so. Like, that's just like ridiculous. But having said that, maybe it's just a motivational quote. I don't know what it is, but when you do look at the world, there have been crazy stuff that have been achieved. Just like people even getting to the moon, like that required millions of dollars, thousands of scientists. The fact that people invented what I'm recording on now to capture time and space and bring it to you, the fact that I can flip a switch and light comes on, the fact that I can fly across the world and travel to places that I couldn't before in record-breaking time. There are some crazy things that are synonymous with the mythical magic that we write about in fiction. It kind of shows that, yeah, we do have crazy ideas that can come about. And it kind of just makes your goals more possible, because so much has already been achieved. But it's not easy, and at the same time, I do think having some dose of practicality is really important, because if you don't have that realistic attitude, it's just not going to work. So I just want to conclude and wrap this whole video up with an example of my own life where I can apply this, so that you can use this in more practical terms, rather than just having it as this like very vague, broad theory in your head. You know, sometimes in my life, there are things that are just very seemingly unrealistic. And I have goals that are unrealistic in a sense. That an example may be, oh, I want to get 1 million subscribers on YouTube, even though I've already released 800 videos on this channel, a lot more on other channels, and I've failed consistently at all of them in a way, since I only get like 10 or 20 views per video. But again, it's still realistic in the sense that I still have been able to get views, and I have already gotten 2,000, which is arguably something like 2% of the 0.2% of the way there, which is not nothing. I just need to do that 998 more times, which is seemingly monstrous, but still arguably doable. And considering the fact that I have another 40 plus years of my life to do it, assuming I don't die from an unexpected accident, there's still some